Hello, Summer of the Monkeys, Chapter 5, the last part. Oh, there were a lot of reasons, Grandpa said. In a way, you couldn't blame them. This professor was an odd-looking duck. He was as long as a fence rail and as bony as a whalebone corset. He had a little beard that stuck straight out from his chin about 5 inches. It was so sharp on the end, you could have split a stump with it. I never saw a man with so much hair on his head, and I don't think he ever combed it, as it was always bushed out like the tail of a scared tomcat. I laughed and said, "Why, Grandpa, no wonder the Indians thought that professor was crazy. If I saw a man who looked like that, I'd think he was crazy too." Grandpa nodded his head and said, "It wasn't only the way the professor looked. I think the way he acted and his clothes had a lot to do with it. He wore shirts that didn't have any sleeves at all, and his pants were cut off about to here." With his finger, Grandpa made a slash across his legs above his knee. Every time the professor got after a butterfly, he would start running and waving that net and yelling and making all kinds of racket. The Indians saw him loping around through the country and figured that he had lost his mind. If it hadn't been for your grandma, I'd have taken a club to that professor. "What did Grandma have to do with it, Grandpa?" I asked. Grandpa frowned and started digging at the whiskers on his chin. "This professor was a talker," he said. "He could talk a fish right out of the river. Your grandma thought he was the smartest man in the world. He got her all interested in those butterflies, and she wouldn't listen to my running him off." I laughed and laughed and laughed. Great big tears boiled out of my eyes and ran all over my face. Still laughing and wiping tears, I said, "Grandpa, I sure would like to see one of those butterfly professors. That would be better than going to a circus." Grandpa grunted and said, "If I have anything to do with it, you'll never see one around here. There's not enough room in the country for me and another one of those butterfly professors. One of us would have to leave." I was still laughing when Grandma hallooed from the house, "Jay Berry, is that you?" "Yeah, Grandma," I hollered back. "It's me." "Before you go home," Grandma said, "you come by the house. I have some things I want to send to your mother." "All right, Grandma," I said. On hearing Grandma, Grandpa got all nervous. He got up from his chair and started fidgeting around. Looking at me, he said, "I don't believe it'd be a good idea to let your grandma know too much about this monkey catching business of yours. When it comes to hunting and fishing and things like that, women can't see things like men do." "I know just what you mean, Grandpa," I said. "I have enough trouble with Mama and Daisy. Every time I leave the house, Mama thinks I'm going to get eaten up by something. And even if I catch a little old lizard, Daisy thinks I'm the meanest boy in the world. The other day, she told me that if I didn't quit catching things, God was going to send a bolt of lightning down out of the sky and split me wide open." Grandpa laughed and said, "Oh, I don't think the good Lord would do anything like that. Not to a boy, anyway. He can understand things better than women folks can. I found it out a long time ago not to pay too much attention to the women. They don't mean half of what they say anyhow." "I try not to pay attention to them, Grandpa," I said, "but it doesn't seem to do any good. Why, Mama has broken so many switches off our peach trees, I don't think they'll ever have any more peaches on them." Grandpa laughed and said, "Peaches are pretty good things to have around, all right, but they're not the most important things in the world." "They're not half as important as hunting and fishing," I said. Looking at his watch, Grandpa said, "Well, it's getting late, and you'd better be getting home. I don't want you to be out on the road after dark." "Oh, I'm not scared of the dark, Grandpa," I said. "I used to be, but not as long as Rowdy's with me. He can take care of anything that wants to jump on us." Looking at Rowdy, Grandpa smiled and said, "Yes, I guess he could. You know, when I was a boy about your age, I had a dog, too. He was a hound just about like Rowdy, and I felt about like you do. As long as he was with me, I wasn't scared of anything." "Why, Grandpa," I said, "I didn't know that you had a dog when you were a boy. You'd never said anything to me about it before. I bet you could tell me a lot of good stories about some of the things you and your dog did." With a faraway look in his eyes, Grandpa said, "Yes, I expect I could. But right now, with it getting late and with your grandma wanting to see you, I don't think we have time. Someday, after we've caught all the monkeys, I'll tell you about some of the things my old dog and I got into." "Is that a promise, Grandpa?" I asked. "Yes," Grandpa said, nodding his head. "That's a promise. Now, you'd better be on your way. I have to lock up the store and get my chores done." I thanked Grandpa again for all the help he'd given me and started for the house to see what Grandma wanted.